Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
How well established is the hiring process in your practice? Well, an easy way to answer that question would be by looking at how difficult it is for you to add new personnel, whether they're lost due to quitting or having been let go. If it's easy to find somebody new, then you probably have a well-established process. If it's not, you probably don't. And you'll find from an organizational perspective that things run best when you have a well-established process. And to clarify what I mean by that, it would be a process that's written down ideally, that is known by the people who are involved with it, that is practiced, and that actually works. It gets you the expected or desired result. And if you want to look at an example of this, imagine I were to call your practice as a patient of record and you had diagnosed, I don't know, let's say 2 crowns on me, and I called and I wanted to get on your schedule. Well, chances are you have that pretty well figured out, from where to schedule me, how to schedule me, obviously how to do the procedure, how the tray should be set up, what lab you're using. This is all figured out because it's something you're doing on a regular basis, and because of that, you had to establish a process. But then if you look at your organization and you look at where things are troublesome, you'll find that you don't have processes like that established. Maybe you're having scheduling problems. Well, maybe there's no organization to your schedule. Maybe you're having case acceptance problems. That could be due to sales skills, or it could be due to lack of organization. Or we come to hiring. Maybe you're having trouble finding people. Well, chances are there's no process. So if you're having difficulty with bringing on new people, or you'd like to sharpen your skills in this area, this episode is for you. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And my guest for this episode is MGE's Vice President of Administration, Ashley Fuegel. And together we'll be going through the entire hiring process, how we do it, as well as what we teach our clients to do, from ads to interview to hire. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about Ashley. She has been a guest before. It's been a little while, I think. You're over there, Ashley, right? And all hooked up? Yeah, it has been a bit. Ashley's been with the company since 2006, and she actually came in originally as our HR director. She's worked her way up to becoming the Vice President of Administration, which obviously due to being extraordinarily competent, which is awesome. And you've interviewed how many prospective personnel? Yeah.
I'd say hundreds.
This has been your area for a long time, which thankfully it is no longer mine. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And before we get into this, I want to explain something and make a disclaimer. Neither of us are employment attorneys. And I know this, you know this, state employment law, if you're in the United States, and Canada is a whole other thing. And if you're listening from outside the U.S. or Canada, it's probably something different. But even in the United States, employment law varies state to state. Like I know, for example, we have a job application that we use here in Florida, and there's a separate one we use in California.
Yep, and we only employ people in those 2 states. So
if we,
I don't even know all the other.
Right. Like for example, I don't know if you folks know this. Some Louisiana code has still Napoleonic code in it, from when the French had Louisiana.
Oh wow!
Yeah, there's just so laws vary state to state. So you want to make sure that you have some type of an employment lawyer, or you mentioned earlier an HR
Even
company
an
when
HR
we were talking.
Can review their stuff.
Right, someone to talk to. So because we're going to give you some handouts and things like this, but by all means, get those checked out first before you use them. We're making no claims in that regard whatsoever.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about this. So we're looking at from the beginning. You need to hire somebody new.
Yeah.
Where are you finding them?
So obviously it depends on the position we're looking for and how much experience I need. But Indeed is great. We use Indeed consistently. But then I'm always, just like promoting for patients, you got to promote in a bunch of places. So we'll put ads up on Indeed, local business boards, grocery store bulletin boards. We are always asking the current existing staff for referrals. We sign at the front desk. Like, you always just really want to have it out there when you're hiring. For our clients, I tell them talk to other doctors, talk to their patients. A bigger thing for them is also to put that sign at the front desk. A lot of our clients will say to me like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, it looks bad that they're hiring or something like that, which I never really understand. I'm like, guys, you're hiring, you're a business just like any other business.
Right.
Put a nice sign up at the front desk, and they're surprised how many of their patients will say, oh, my friend or my kid or myself or whatever is looking, and have the front desk able to give them an application right away, or tell the office manager if they're someone applies.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now I know we've referred clients to things like, what is it, Dental Post? Is it things like that?
Yeah.
How has that been?
That has, since 2020, it is not as lucrative as it used to be.
Okay.
It's really, you can find people there, but I've found that people are really, Indeed is the strongest one across the boards, across the country for our clients. It really is.
Got it.
It's still. And there's some tweaks on that. Indeed probably not going to be happy with me, but don't do the paid. You can have it where you pay to boost it.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
So you see no impact from that?
It's not even there's no impact, it's less impact.
What?
Yep. We tell our clients to take that off. Just do the free and you're going to get more resumes than you do if you do the paid.
That's
Again,
bizarre.
Indeed's probably not going to
I don't know if they listen to this.
appreciate
If they do, Indeed people, sorry. We
exactly.
like you.
We still.
But this was something, it's funny because I was talking to Chris, Chris is in charge of all of our, he's our power client management director. He's the senior to all of our power client managers at Chris Mankhouse. And Chris was saying also with provider positions, like a hygienist.
Yeah.
Initially, we thought we went in there because Indeed has filters, must have a license because you'd think, hello. And he was finding that the number of applications coming in were, just a dribble. And then once he had them take all the filters off, our clients, all of a sudden they got a bunch. But if it's a bunch of people who want to be a hygienist who aren't licensed, okay, yeah, got it. But these were licensed hygienists that weren't appearing when they put that license filter on.
Yep.
So
yeah, there's just some tweaks with Indeed that if the person doesn't know how to click them, then they will get filtered out.
Interesting.
So we take the filters off and we don't do the paid and they get more applicants. Qualified applicants. They might get more resumes they have to go through, but it's super easy with Indeed if you use their tools. Just click, want, don't want it, click, and it's really
interesting.
Easy. Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to ask you, right? And we didn't talk about talking about this because we at least have to do a little prep, but I found it interesting. So, you were mentioning a lot of things that have changed since 2020.
Yeah.
On personnel lines. Now, I have not been as in depth on personnel. Usually I just see, hey, we want to hire so-and-so. Right. Cool. Sounds great.
Right.
But what are the major changes? I just thought this would be an interesting question to ask.
So we used to not put how much we were paying on our ads.
Yeah.
And we do that now.
So we have to put, that's a requirement.
Yep.
Now.
On Indeed, you have to. But even on other places, people are really looking for that.
Interesting.
And because of the change in the economy, people move jobs more often than they used to. And it doesn't necessarily as negative as it used to be.
Okay, so this was what the reason I brought this up. You just mentioned this to me before we started.
Right.
Was one of the red flags we would always look for in a resume was a job hopper. Like my favorite was when somebody put that they had worked somewhere for 3 weeks. Like, I think I could go, I was just looking for a job for those 3 weeks. I just wouldn't even list that person.
Yeah.
And you'd never be the wiser. But that was always a red flag for us. Doesn't mean we would exclude the person altogether, but we would want to find out, why is this person only at this job 3 months, this job 4 months? Maybe they were moving, maybe, there might be a good explanation.
Yeah.
But if it was just because they wanted to look for another job, that was always a bit of a red flag for us.
Yeah.
So you're saying now that's not as much of a red flag anymore.
Not as much. And it used to be a red flag, like I would go through resumes and maybe call those people on the phone and talk to them and call the other guys in, or, just get the story beforehand. Right. Now, I just call them all in because people change jobs. Again, the economy really has affected that. And people be like, look, I was making this and I could do the same job over there for $3 more, $4 more. And that's a big impact for people.
Now, when you say the economy,
obviously.
Are you thinking more inflation?
Yes.
Got it.
And if you've got kids and $4 more an hour.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It's almost $200 a week.
And so they switch jobs, and I can think with that. It's to a degree, it's logical. I've sat down in front of many people, and they're like, well, I've got 2 kids, and, the guy down the street was paying more, and I needed to change jobs. It was, I'm like, yeah, I can understand now.
Interesting.
And
I'm suppressing my going off on a rant about them raising their fees and getting out of PPOs to keep up with inflation. But if anything makes my point,
yeah,
this is good. But go ahead.
And employers are a lot more competitive with it as well. And so people are offering signing bonuses, offering things like that to entice people to come to them. And so it's a much more competitive market, and you have to be sharper and you have to be honed into that.
Okay, so as far as major changes you've observed, obviously on our ads we're listing how much, and we're not necessarily, because of the inflation and its impact on the economy and employees, the whole job hopping thing isn't as big of a red flag as it used to be.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'd say the other thing that's really key, you do have to pay a bit higher now. You really do. And this is something we go over with the clients. They can't be the mediocre if they want to get the top people.
Right.
Right. And the key on that is just that once you hire them, because our clients are like, well, I don't have the money for that. Or what am I going to do? How am I going to come up, pay this, pay more? Is when you hire them, you have to just get them on the job quickly and get them being a productive member of the team quickly and make that decision. Are they going to make it at your, is it the right fit or not?
Right.
And having the tools to make them productive.
Right.
Which we offer lots of.
Well, yeah, that's true. Shameless plug. I think part of the issue I've always had with that, if you're bringing in somebody who you're paying more than normal, because we've done it.
Yeah.
And I remember I did it a lot early in my career, and then I got a bit averse to it, because you bring a person in, and let's say they're supposed to be making for that job, I don't know, 50 a year, and you're paying them 75 or 80 because that's what they need, and you really think this person would do well or whatever. To a degree, and I'm being figurative here, obviously, they're walking in with a bit of a gun to their head.
Right.
Because they have to perform quickly. Otherwise, you're going to go, this just is, you could apply this to any industry. Person's paying an associate 150 to start or 180 to start. It's like that person has to be productive quick. Otherwise, this just isn't going to work.
Right.
We can't do this.
Right.
But now I want to just go back to one thing you said. So they have to be willing to pay more. Right. But then, okay, so we've had a pretty well established, it's been about 20% inflation since March of 2020, which was when all the COVID stuff started, right? So are we looking for more? I mean, I know in hygienist cases and whatnot, but let's say the average administrative assistant type, are we talking about more than a 20% raise, or is it about a 20% raise?
On some it's more.
Really?
On some it's definitely more. And that is it's a big change since 2020 is that you have to pay more to get the higher end people. Because obviously I've been doing the hiring for a long time, and that used to be our MO very much like, well, come in, prove your worth, and I'll pay you that in 3 months even, 90 days, whatever. And now they'll just go somewhere else because somebody else will offer it to them walking in. And so you're going to lose the good employees if you tell them that, because they can't do it anymore, because they can't buy their groceries.
Right.
It's not a matter of they want to, come in and prove themselves or whatever, but they could go, okay, I can figure it out for, 60 days, 90 days, because I know I can make it at this company and I know I can prove my worth to them. They can't anymore.
Interesting.
And if they can't, they can't,
All right, so we're talking about somebody who in 2020 was making $20 an hour, or 2019. That person, if we were to just track with inflation, you'd have to offer them 24. In some cases, we're offering that, or we may have to offer a little more, but then their runway is severely shortened. Right. So then they got to show us something quick.
Right. And I tell them that. I do tell them that. I'm never secretive up front when we hire people. Like, they know they're kind of under the spotlight.
Sure.
Like, you got to come in, you got to get going, you've got to show us that you can do what you say you can do. Put your money,
Because someone who wants to put their money where their mouth is, no, that's fine. But so let's say we're applying this with a client. So let's say I need a good dental assistant. I have somebody, maybe they're not an EFTA, but they come in and they're a good dental assistant, and the going rate for an assistant in my area is $25. This person's like, well, I can get 28 down the street. So you go, okay, I'm going to pay you 28. But look, you got to show me something. So then they're there for the first week, because that's maybe what I would pay a really skilled assistant. Right. Like, I'm not paying outside my range, I guess. So just make clear to everybody listening. Yeah. If I would never pay 28, then it's like, good, go to the other office. But if I would pay 28 for someone who was killer, then all right, so I'm going to pay you 28 now, but then I got to see something quick. Right. And if I don't see something quick, then you got to move on. Right. And I think, And you have to have your procedure set up. So you bring that person in and you go, great. In that first day, here's how you set up my rooms. Go set up my rooms. Right. They better get it quickly. Yeah. If they come and tell you they don't know how to sterilize the equipment, okay. Yeah, they can't. They don't have to run the autoclave. Right. Like, okay. You got a problem. Got it. All right, so now back to the process, but that's good. I think that was illuminating because you were starting to talk to me a bit about before we walked up here, and that's helpful.
Yeah.
All right, so that's where we find people,
Yep.
Indeed, everywhere else. But then, so let's say you get these resumes. We're advertising for, I don't know, an administrative assistant or someone. It's not a specialized position because we have some of those here just as our clients do.
Sure.
So you get some resumes in. How quickly are we contacting these people?
24 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, we pause our ads a lot of times we work Saturdays, so a lot of times Saturday at the end of the day we pause them, pick them back up Mondays because, people are moving fast still.
Right.
It has slowed down some, but people are still moving quickly.
Okay.
The other employers, they're gonna get people fast. So within 24 hours, we're calling them, ideally scheduling an interview within 48 hours,
Is this like an in-person interview or a Zoom interview?
Usually in person. That's my preference.
I mean, obviously, if the person's in Michigan, I would assume it's Zoom.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did go heavy in 2021 on doing the video interviews. I wasn't a fan. Part of the application process for me is, can you show up? Can you dress professionally?
Right.
Can you be on time? So with the Zoom interviews or using Indeed's video app, I couldn't really judge that as well. So in 2021, I let my HR person do them that way, and then I moved back. Like, no, just bring people in, have them come in. They also don't get to see us. When you interview somebody, you're interviewing them, but they're also interviewing you to a degree. You want them to be happy here. You don't want them to, feel uncomfortable or, not like it or whatever. So I like when they come in and they see the office and they see the other people that work here and they're like, oh yeah, I think I like this place. I like to work here. On Zoom, they just see me or my HR person.
And your background.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then we do the interview. This is our first interview because we do 2 interviews, right?
So we do 2 interviews, but sometimes it's in the same trip now.
Got it. Okay.
Because,
so
again,
it might
you
be
gotta
same
move
day.
fast.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Because I remember the process was interview 1, then we do some stuff, bring them back for interview 2. But now, because employees are a rarer commodity,
Right.
we're doing first and second interview on the same day.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so they've gone through whatever hoops there are in the first interview. You're looking at their resume, and I know we can't get into the whole interview process. We can do that for a later episode, like your whole interview process.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things you're looking for on their application and their resume?
So when I sit down with them, there's obviously a lot of things I'm looking for.
course.
I'm going to talk to the person,
Sure.
that sort of thing. But specifically, I go through our application first, not their resume.
Well, I guess that's a good point. The resume's for them.
Right.
They wrote it.
Exactly.
And by the way, I will put a sample of the application we use now, and I'm going to clarify again. You have to, this is a sample. It has big disclaimers on it. You can't just use it because, as I mentioned, I think when we were talking earlier, we use a different application for California. We're putting our non-California application. So if you're, whatever, you still got to have it all checked by your attorney, okay?
Right.
But I'll put the application we use as a download on the episode webpage.
Cool.
So you go to use the application.
Yeah. So I use our application first. And here's where I'm going to pick up, like, if they were short-term at their prior job or several jobs, I am going to find out why. So, it's not as much of a red flag, but I'm still going to find out, okay, well, why did you move jobs?
Right. Now, just to stop you, what would be a good answer and a bad answer in that regard? Just so I know if I ever end up being interviewed.
A good answer?
Like my spouse got a better job in another state, so we moved.
Yeah.
But then how about I just felt like I needed to change careers?
Yeah, that's probably not a good answer.
Or I woke up in the morning and I hated my job, so I left.
That's usually a red flag, like
especially
okay.
if it's multiple times.
Multiple times, or they were there for like 3 months, or people generally don't sit in front of me and be like, "Well, I sucked at the job, so they fired me."
I'd respect that.
But exactly, if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, "Great, what do you feel you weren't good at that job?"
I mean, when I was just out of school looking for jobs, I had one job that just was not in my thing.
Right.
It just was not my thing.
Right.
Like, it just isn't what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I was very short term.
And I would have said that.
Sure.
But then I would respect that because then I maybe wouldn't place the person in that kind of job, but maybe I've got another job they would be good at, like sales. That's a common one. Some people try it out and it's not for them. And that does not mean that I couldn't do something else with them.
Maybe they're a good administrator or something. So you get into their jobs.
Yep.
Do you ask them about their past employers or what do you ask them specifically?
I'll ask them how they got along with their other coworkers. How did it go with the manager at the job? And I'm looking for like how they respond that they fit in at that company.
Okay, so let's say I tell you, well, I didn't think it was a really good fit. I mean, nothing against those folks. They're good folks. We just didn't seem to click.
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
No.
How about if I go off on a rant about, oh, my boss is terrible, what a scumbag, criminal, blah, 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 blah.
And that could be very true.
Okay.
However, it's not something that I would say in an interview or that I would really, it'd be another point of a red flag. You have to look at interviewing as a whole package, though. It's not like, hey, that one thing means I wouldn't hire them.
Sure.
It's a whole package. So if they checked 8 boxes perfectly and 2 boxes negative, okay, that's not so bad, right?
Sure.
But I'm certainly going to call that prior employer and talk to them.
When you do references.
Right, when I do reference checks. In Florida, we can ask them if I can call the prior place of employment. And it's another, if they won't let me call them, that's another place I'm like, oh, okay, well, what happened there?
Interesting.
Right? So if they were very critical of that position, I would probably call them. And I might find that the person was like, yeah, that employee was terrible and stole from us. Couldn't happen.
Wow. Okay. So then,
so
we'll get into references here in a bit.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of interesting.
So I go through their application first. Then I will go through the resume after that, ask them any questions on the resume that I might want to know.
Do you look for any performance related issues? Like if you're, let's say, I tell you I was a salesperson at ABC company, and how are you going to gauge my performance?
So I'll ask them how they compare to the other salespeople at that position. So if I was closing 5 deals a day, great. Your coworkers, what were they closing? 3 or 1 or 7.
You're trying to see where I rank.
Right.
Because then, obviously we can establish that someone performed elsewhere.
Right.
But that doesn't, it's like stocks. It's not a guarantee of future performance, past performance.
Exactly.
But at least the fact that the person has performed something somewhere.
And that they know that. That's a positive.
Interesting.
Right? That they think with the idea that, oh, well, yeah, I did something for that company, as opposed to like I showed up and got a paycheck.
So let me ask you, if you said to me, I'm a sales guy, and you go, well, how many deals were you closing a day? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, that would not be a salesperson I would hire. I have never met a salesperson that didn't know what they were closing if they were a good salesperson.
That's hilarious. Okay, good. All right, so let's say I've made it through the first interview with your HR department.
Yeah.
Okay. I've made it through the first interview. What happens to me next?
So then we do placement testing.
Okay.
Right? And there's all kinds of placement testing out there. We have a specific one we use. So they'll do the initial interview and then they do placement testing. And it's placement testing. So this is, again, part of the whole package, but helps make sure that if we're going to, put them on an accounting position, they can do math.
Okay.
If they're going to be on a customer service position, they have good communication skills.
All right. So we're looking at we're looking at these tests to determine, like, because there's various forms of psychometric testing, right? You obviously want to use one that's employment compliant. That's why, again, you need an employment attorney or an HR company. But you want to determine, do I have the general aptitude to do that job?
Right.
So now you mentioned something interesting, and I know I tend to digress a bit, but like if we're hiring somebody for finance, whether they're in our accounting department or whatever, we check their ability to do math.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, that seems like a no-brainer, but a lot of people don't do that, do they?
I have run into 2 clients that I've spoken to that did testing.
Really?
And that's it.
So if I have someone handling my collections, I'd
yeah.
probably want to see if they can do basic subtraction, addition, multiplication. They don't have to be able to do algebra.
No.
But it's funny because I think back to, I don't know if I've ever told this story in the podcast. I think Sabri was everybody knows Sabri. My wife was at Hobby Lobby buying some yarn. She was crocheting something. And the people in front of them, they're paying cash. And the person rung it up as if they were paying one way, a certain amount of cash. And they're like, oh, no, let me give you an extra quarter, change, and then you can give me a solid dollar rather than a bunch of change.
Yep.
And the cashier didn't know what to do. Yep. They couldn't do math. So Sabri neither could the customer. So Sabri had to interject and do the math on a piece of paper so that they got the correct change. That's our education system. Never mind, I'm going to stop.
Yeah. Okay.
Good, whatever.
So
anyway, good grief.
Definitely do some placement testing.
Yes. Okay, good.
Especially someone that's going to be on money.
Right. So we're not doing it to exclude people. No. We're doing it to find out where the person fits best within the company.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do that. Let's say we figured out, okay, this person's a good fit for X position. We really think that's a good thing. Now you talked about the second interview.
Right. So like I said, I have somebody that does the hiring now. I did it myself for a long time. So I will do the second interview.
Okay, so our HR person's doing the first interview.
Yep.
You're doing the second
Right.
one. Now, I noticed you've also, and we've done this in the past too, if you're hiring somebody who's going to be in the MGE course room, or someone who's going to work with, me, or someone who's going to work with our sales department, you'll also have
the senior executive over there. Yeah, it may not. Most times it's me. Sometimes it's the senior executive over those two areas.
So if it's like the new public sales department,
there's really only 3 people.
Got it.
Like we don't go too far down in the organization, not because they're not qualified, but they aren't hatted, they aren't trained on all the different things you can and can't ask in interviews. They aren't trained in all the things that you can and can't ask when you're interviewing somebody. So.
Got it. So if I'm hiring somebody for new public sales, they go through HR. Then for that second interview, they're meeting with Santone, Jeff Santone, and possibly you with Jeff Santone, just so he can get his take and go, I think this person is a good fit for my area.
Right.
So a client, it might be the office manager who's doing the initial interview, but it's going to be a dental assistant, so they have them meet the lead assistant.
Yes.
Got it.
And they can also, it gives the person the opportunity to ask more in-depth questions about the job and for the job to be explained more in depth to the person. Because I like them to know if we're all the way at a second interview, quote unquote step, then I'm very interested in hiring this person. So now I'm going to really make sure they know what I'm going to expect of them.
Got it.
So.
All right. So now we've gotten to the point where we're ready to hire this person. But now I know we still have a couple points to do. You mentioned references earlier.
Yep.
But I want to talk about this for a minute because I've had a lot of clients ask me about this. References, background checks, and credit checks.
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we start with references?
So we always check references. And my preference is checking their references of not just the names they give me, but prior employment.
Not just the names. What do you mean?
They will give me a list of references, like personal references,
like
my best friend,
my buddy,
right? Who's not going to say anything negative about me. But like I said, in Florida, we can ask for prior employment if I can call their prior employer.
Got it.
Let me rephrase that. And those are my preference to call.
Now, just to clarify, I know you're not an attorney, neither am I.
Yeah.
But so are you saying that in certain states, if a person lists that they work for ABC company, that's their prior employer, I have to ask if I can call them?
Yes.
So they could say no.
Yeah. Even in Florida, they can say no.
Okay, so if a person lists 3 prior jobs and says, I can't call any of them, I mean, because I do want to ask you about something else here. That to me would be a major turnoff.
Yes.
Because then what do you not want me to know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so now, so again, really all we're looking for here is a good person who's going to be productive and a good fit for our organization. Right? Because I know in certain cases also, they'll list the names of references, and that might be, or they may even list the reference as their prior boss, and they'll list like a cell number.
Yep.
And it may just be their buddy. I've heard of this before that you're calling who's like, oh yeah, John was the best dude who ever worked for us, but it's really just some rando. It's not the actual company.
Right.
So I know that when we call the company, we're looking online to see what's the actual phone number for this company, aren't we?
Yeah. Like I will look at the number they gave, but then I'll check it.
So now you're calling for a reference. So I'm the former employer. What are you asking?
So I will ask them first, did the person work there?
Sure.
These were the dates they told me. This was the pay they told me. And have them verify all that.
Sure.
Which is kosher. We can do that. I'll ask them to explain, would they rehire the person? Did they perform well? If it was a salesperson like you were talking about, they said that they were doing 5 deals a day.
Sure.
Can you verify that? How does that compare to the other salespeople? Like those kinds of questions. Most people won't answer.
Interesting.
A lot of questions. We don't answer a lot of questions.
I think everybody's become, and I think this actually is a little detached, and I'll invite the people listening to call their own HR companies for this, but I think everybody has become petrified of saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of that type of a thing. Like there's things you could be saying like, oh yeah, Joe closed 5 deals a day.
Exactly.
He was awesome.
Exactly.
What's funny with a positive reference, they usually will, won't they?
Right. And that's the
we're
thing.
Sorry to lose him.
Yep. He was, great employee. Sometimes I'll ask, why did he leave?
Right.
But it's just that people are very cagey and won't say a lot.
Because they're trying to stay out of trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
But even on the positive, they don't want to be responsible for me hiring somebody and then it doesn't work out with me.
What if is that only if they know you?
I mean,
So I could be some employer in Michigan, and I don't want to make you responsible for hiring them, and they don't work out.
yeah, I guess I only had that happen twice, but I had that happen. They literally said to me, they were really good, but for our company, I don't know if they're going to be good for you. And I was like, I mean, I'm not going to be mad at you if they are.
Was this since 2020?
Was it?
It's just
I think one of them was.
It's a sad statement on the state of society that you can't take responsibility for making a good recommendation because you might not like it.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's what I'll ask the references.
Okay.
At the prior employment.
And then I know we instituted about 6-7 years ago, we do full background checks and in certain cases credit checks. And I wanted to talk about that for a minute. And first off, because people always ask this, what company do we use? We use S2 Verify, right?
We use S2 Verify. Usually their payroll company has an option.
I know ADP has an option.
ADP does.
We'll put the link to S2 Verify on the episode webpage if you want to check them out.
Yeah.
The reason I bring this up is I don't remember when this was. I was giving a personnel seminar and somebody's like, oh yeah, I do a background check on Been Verified.
Ooh.
And it says specifically you're attesting that you're not using this for like a housing or an employment decision. Yeah. Like you're not allowed to do that. No. You're not. It's not like you're dating this person. Yeah. You have to use a reputable company. Yeah. The person acknowledges and signs paperwork from S2 Verify that we're doing the background check.
Right, and we give them copies of it. There's they need to talk to an HR company because there are lots of rules here. Mm-hmm. So they sign that they know they're getting a background check. They give me an email address. The email address goes in, and they get a copy of what I get.
Got it.
And then in the event we decide not to hire them because of something on the background check, then there are further steps we have to take there.
Got it. Okay, and this S2 Verify goes through this with you.
Yeah, they provide a lot of the forms. I believe that our HR attorney had to give one of them that they didn't provide because it's state specific.
Okay, very good. Yeah. And so then we do our background check, and that's usually pretty quick, isn't it?
It's usually pretty quick. If they've lived in other states, it's not as fast.
So what's the longest it usually takes? Well, no, I mean, I don't want to say worst case scenario. What's the average? How's that?
The average is 1 day.
1 day.
But it's common that I'll get 2 to 3 days. Now, the thing I like with S2 Verify is that if one is taking a long time, I actually have this right now. I can call them, and then they will call that wherever they're getting the data from and ask them to expedite it.
Got it.
So
no, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. And then we also do credit checks on anybody we're putting into the financial area.
Yes.
And there's a whole process for that.
Yeah, credit checks is a whole different process. You actually have to get an inspection of how you store the information, before they'll give you that availability to do credit checks.
And it's funny, I've had clients ask me, because I know we instituted that together. My whole thing on credit checks with a financial person is if I'm putting somebody on financial lines, whether it's collecting money from clients or doing company accounting or whatever, there's a couple reasons. One is if they've somehow wrecked themselves credit-wise or financially, and again, I use judgment. Like let's say their credit's pristine other than they had a bankruptcy because some company that they had a part of got wrecked or something. I can usually forgive that because it doesn't show a pattern.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a continuous pattern of just paying their bills late for the last 15 years and I'm going to have this person paying my bills, there's no guarantee that they're not going to take that same condition and dramatize it on,
And what I tell clients is to think with the dental assistant that doesn't have good hygiene in their mouth.
Right.
It's the same concept.
Right.
Like if they're sitting there with your patient and they don't care about their teeth and they don't take care of them, you think they're going to care about your money?
Right.
If they have the similar thing on their money.
And for me, credit is mainly just it's more applicable to financial.
Totally.
If there's something else, if it's a dental assistant, I wouldn't do a credit check.
Yeah. And clients will ask me, okay, well, do I do it for an office manager?
I would.
Right. And Absolutely. That's what I tell them. If you're going to have your office manager dealing with your money,
Yeah. There's a whole kind of bunch of, we could get into this and spend hours on this one, but when someone starts to and I'm not condemning anyone for this. And the cool part is you could have someone who has trouble with money and train them, clean it up a bit, and then they don't. And then they're able to make more money and then things go better. But you don't want somebody in the throes of that condition all over your money.
Right.
It doesn't tend to work out too well.
Right.
Okay, good. All right, so now we've done our background check, credit check as applicable. We've done the first interview, second interview, and now I know you have this condensed into like a day now.
Yeah.
So let's say, okay, here's Susan, and we want to hire Susan now. So what do we do with Susan next?
So we send her an offer letter that details the position she's going to be holding, some of the key things about being employed here that, production oriented, what their job is based on, stuff like that. I think it even tells the vacation policy in the offer letter nowadays to make it clear.
And we're going to put a copy of this offer letter. I think we made a sample for our clients.
Yeah.
We'll put a copy of this also on the episode webpage.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't have all the policies in it, but we've implemented somewhere on ours. We have a kind of unique vacation policy.
Of course.
Anyway, but it gives them kind of an outline of the basics, what they need to know, what we're going to expect.
Do they have to sign this?
Yeah. So we send that to them, and then they sign it, they send it back, and then we set a start date.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then they've accepted the offer now, pay has been set. I mean, it's a pretty comprehensive process.
Yeah.
But what we tell clients is you can eliminate some of the potential for error, but there's always a potential for error when you're hiring somebody new, right? But that chops down a lot of it.
Yeah, it's very comprehensive, but at the same time, it's set up. I don't want it to be so laborious that we don't hire people.
Sure.
I've seen clients do this. They go through hoops and steps and this is and that's, and then I'm like, the guy's going to get a job somewhere else.
Yeah, because I don't want to deal with this junk. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you're going to, again, in my analogy, like you have 10 boxes that you're trying to check. If they don't check 2 of them, they don't hire them.
Right.
I'm like, you're looking for like a needle in a haystack.
Right.
You have to be able to hire people with or without experience and train them.
Yeah, you're not, it's like, that's the whole thing. It's obviously we're, a pretty open workplace in the sense of we'll hire anybody as long as they can perform.
Right.
That's all. And if they continue to perform, they've got a job.
Yeah.
And I don't care where they went to school, where they're from,
Exactly.
what walk of life they've come from. I don't really care.
Right.
I want people who can be part of the team.
Yeah. And I think I talked about this on one of MGE's tips, but with 2020, we started telling clients a lot more to hire people without experience.
Well, because the job market just kind of regurgitated
Right.
all these professional people
Right.
into the market because
Right.
their companies went under.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my last question for you. And I know we'll do a whole separate episode on onboarding, but what are we kind of looking for that first week? So you've just hired this person. I know that they spend a day or two sort of figuring out where everything is and having a place to go, which we'll get into that with onboarding.
Yeah.
But if you just had to say, what's the main thing you're looking for that first week?
Really that they can contribute to the group.
Okay.
That they can do something, they can do it correctly, and it contributes to what we're doing as a group. So whether it's, I tell clients, whether it's have them sit up at the front desk and do the, birthday postcards.
Right. Or they could do, like for a client, I would have them probably you could teach somebody to do reactivation calls in about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You can even write most of it down into a video.
Yeah.
See if they can make some appointments.
Yep.
Because if they can't do that, they're probably not going to cut it in the practice.
Right. Or if they won't do it.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I don't like being on the phone.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why that just sticks in my cross. Somebody told me about a client who had a scheduler they were hiring who just didn't like being on the phone. Like, I don't know. I just don't know what to say about that.
I mean, I wouldn't have hired them as a scheduler.
Well, no kidding, but anyway. All right, so like with our example, let's say we've hired somebody new to sales.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't even know the software in there yet. They know nothing. But then I know that we put them on the phone and at least try to help them make appointments for the salesperson because they can do that easy.
Yep.
In a practice, it might make reactivation calls or, send the birthday cards out or whatever, something they can do.
Well, and I say a lot of times, anybody I hire, even for the sales area, I'll give them to my receptionist for a day.
See if they can answer the phone.
Or even just help her with the outgoing mail that we're
Sure.
doing. We do lots of mailers and stuff like that. And now my receptionist has been with me for a really long time.
She's awesome.
She's awesome.
Amanda, that's who you're talking to when you call. I'm going to say her name. Amanda, she's awesome.
She will give me feedback. She's like my little, like,
spy.
okay, good, right? Like, yeah, they really got it. They didn't get it. Unfortunately, I've had clients bring me envelopes that guys I hired and they don't know how to address an envelope. And
So somehow that got out.
Okay.
But that's another problem. I know that we're starting to, we're moving towards that now. But this is something I talked about a year ago, which is it's not like generationally. Okay, so I'm a Gen Xer, right? You were, I think, an early millennial. I know, whatever. You're an early millennial, but you learned how to write a business letter in grade school, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you still got that.
Yeah.
I learned how to write a business letter in 3rd grade. Or my teacher would go, we're going to learn to write a business letter today and a personal letter.
Yep.
Like that was something we learned early on.
Yep.
But my kids, who were later millennials, did not.
Yeah.
Okay. And like my son doesn't have a checkbook. He would never use a checkbook. What's stupid? Why would
What's a
why
check?
write a check? What is a check? What's a check is a little younger.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. What is this thing the person
My
gave
kids ask me
Yeah.
that.
What's a check?
What's a check?
but doesn't use a checkbook or whatever. Everything's online. And then as you get younger, it's that the younger crowd isn't familiar with business etiquette because they were never taught it in school. We were taught it in school. So that isn't, I don't hold that against them.
No.
Like with a Gen Zer, where I think that they have the middle Gen Zer is now called a zillennial. You like that?
That's great.
Zillennial.
Okay.
But someone who's a younger person, they're in their early 20s. That's a Gen Z.
Yeah.
So Gen Z doesn't necessarily know, like, because if I were to ask you, if we had a customer walk in, Dr. Smith, Dr. James Smith, and how would you refer to, you just meeting him for the first time?
As doctor.
You'd call him Dr. Smith.
I even refer to our doctors that will introduce themselves by first name.
Yeah, as
I
doctor.
still call them doctor.
That's just considered business etiquette, right? It's polite. So we'd say Dr. Smith, or with a patient, if it's a Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith.
Yep.
Whereas someone in Gen Z may say, hey, bruh.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like they don't know. So then if you train them on that, especially if they're willing and they're willing to be trained, it's almost like you have to have a little supplementary training course on business etiquette.
Yeah.
And what's funny, I've been talking about this for a year, and we had a client's, office manager come up to me. Her husband works for some big corporation. They're doing that there. Yeah. They're having to because the younger generation does not know these things, but I don't hold it against them.
Totally.
Because they also know a lot of cool stuff that we don't know.
Yes.
I mean, I won't include TikTok in that, but.
Okay, good.
But whatever. I mean, I know how to use all that. I've always been technological. I just won't.
Yeah, I guess that example of the letter, I don't necessarily hold them against them, but the point I'm looking for is can they do something?
Sure. Well, especially if you've shown them how to do it.
Exactly.
If you don't show them how to do it, it's a whole different story. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, good. That was my last question. I definitely would like to have you back on if you're cool to do something on onboarding.
Yeah.
So, and thank you so much for being here, Ashley.
Cool.
I super appreciate it.
Yeah.
So don't forget, absolutely. Don't forget, folks, we have the, downloads for we have the sample application and the employee offer letter. Is that what we called it?
Yeah.
Yeah. On the episode webpage, you can download those. Otherwise, if you have any questions about MGE or would like to know more about us, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week and we will see you at the next episode.